Hi everyone, this is Shai from Raising the Frequency, and I'm here today with Mark Devlin, straight from the UK. Hi Mark, how you doing?
Hey Shai, I'm surviving, brother. Making the best of the situation.
Yes, yeah, we all are. It's obviously interesting times, challenging times.
You could say that.
I could. And what I like to speak with you, because it's the time that a lot of truths are being revealed to many people. You know, in the last couple of months, more people have woken up in Israel and probably all over the world than the last 10 years or so. And myself, I've woken up to the hidden levels or hidden parts of reality in the last 11 or 12 years or so. But I can tell you as a fact, in the last 2 months, more people have woken up than the last 10 years. And I guess it's true also for the UK, US, and all over the world, which there's some good parts to it, I guess. Can you tell us where you're coming from? What's your field? Why I interview you? I mean, I can tell people, obviously, but I would like to hear it from you because I think you will say it much better than me, and then we dive into the subjects, really.
Yeah. Well, my background is I've been a club and radio DJ and music journalist. That's how I started out. I've always been a music lover. Very early on, I decided I wanted to become a DJ because I wanted other people to get as enthusiastic about music as I was. And so I went off down that path and I pursued it as a full-time job for many years, for about 20 plus years. And in 2010, 10 years ago, I started to wake up to the truth of what's really going on in this world. And my whole worldview, my whole paradigm just completely changed from what it had been before. It was largely as a result of reading the books of David Icke. So I started looking at his material around about 2007, 2008. And I found that the work that he was bringing, his output, answered so many of the questions I had had up to that point about why life seemed so confusing, about why the world seemed so unjust, about why it seemed so insane. And in 2010, so much of that all just kind of came together in my mind and enabled me to make sense of what was happening in the world. And in 2010, I had just turned 40 years old. And they do say that life begins at 40. And it certainly did for me because I never looked at things the same way from that point on. It's now 2020, 10 years later. I've been doing 10 years of deep dive researching into all of the subjects you get into. My specialist area has been the corporate music industry and the entertainment industry generally, and what those institutions are really used for. People think they're just harmless fun and ways to pass the time. But when you get into the true nature of them, you find that they're used for mind control, brainwashing, societal conditioning, social engineering, hypnotizing, and all these other nefarious things. And you realize that the household names that populate these industries, whether it's the music industry or Hollywood movies or TV or any other walks of life where you have popular culture and household names and celebrities that people know, these people are there to give you a controlled version of what is going on in the world and to toe the line and to support certain agendas that are put out there by social engineering think tanks and such. So I've spent 10 years looking into that, and it was the basis of the 2 volumes of musical truth that I put out, my books. The first one came out in 2016, the second one was in 2018, and they were very comprehensive overviews of the true nature of the music industry as I'd come to comprehend it to be. I've just put out an allegorical symbolic novel as well called The Cause and the Cure, which I've loaded with so many truth bombs, dressed up as fiction, apparently fiction,
Nice.
but when you're getting so much truth about what really goes on in the world. So here we are in 2020, and the world is a very different place to what it was in 2019 for everyone. Nobody is escaping this. Nobody can say that their reality this year is the same as it always have been. We've all been forced to embrace very major change. And for me, I've just turned 50 years of age, just a couple of weeks ago. And it really feels as if I'm now living the moment of my life. It feels as if I came into this world. I incarnated into this reality to be participating in the process that's going on now, to be playing my part, to be making my contribution. And I never would have accepted that this was the case maybe 15 years ago. Yeah. If you'd asked me then, I was still out there working as a DJ. The only things that mattered to me were music and parties and where the next gig was coming from. But now I've come to realize that my life is all about what I'm now doing, because what I've been contributing these past few years, and particularly in the last few weeks and months, is what I'm really supposed to be doing. This is my real work, and this is all I'm going to be doing now for the rest of my days until I take my final breath, is putting out truthful, empowering information and trying to motivate and galvanize other people to take this on board and understand what right action is, living in right action, understand how principles of natural law work, universal law, spiritual law, call it what you will. These fundamental principles that govern the behaviors of our lives and dish out consequences appropriate to the free will choices that we make. This is now what my world is all about. I have very little time for the DJing stuff anymore. Sometimes I forget that I ever was a DJ. And it's a funny thing, Shai, because I spent many, many years as a DJ trying to be successful, trying to become well-known, trying to be influential, and I never really achieved that. I achieved a certain degree of success. I went so far, but I could never make it to superstar status. And now, of course, I understand that it's the best thing that never happened to me, because to become a household name celebrity, you have to sell your soul. Yeah. You have to make compromises. You have to start doing the bidding of those that tell you what to do. But I could never really comprehend why it was that I wasn't going further than I did. And now I realize why it was. It's because that's not where I was supposed to be. That was preparatory work. I did radio shows, I wrote articles for magazines and such. I got used to interviewing people. I got to know how the music industry works from the inside so that I could be doing the work that I now am. It was laying the foundations for this. So this is right where I need to be. And I comprehend it to be so now in a way that I didn't before. It's a very long-winded way of answering your question, but
no,
I hope we got it.
It's great. I want to tell the viewers really and the listeners that we met. I mean, I know you from other videos you've put out over the years regarding the music industry, and we've met a few weeks ago in the event 202, which was kind of a sane reply to the event 201. The simulation of Johns Hopkins Hospital regarding the outbreak, etc. And immediately when we met, I knew that we are on the same page here and we need to speak. And I wrote you in a private message, let's talk. And here we are, a few weeks after we're here. And can you, I mean, over the years, I also went deep. I don't know if deep like you, which is fine, but into the music industry, Hollywood, how actors and stars, human stars, not sky stars, how they are being manipulated, how they are being controlled, how the system really works. Now I know this is now your expertise, as you obviously put it so well. You haven't become a superstar in your field, so you can do that now, which is far more important for all of us.
Yeah. So, well, what I was going to go on to say, and I lost my train of thought, was that I never really made it that big as a DJ, but the feedback that I'm now getting from people all over the world telling me that my work has had a major influence on them is just off the scale. And particularly these last few weeks, I've been putting out a lot of videos in response to the coronavirus scam hoax, because that's surely what it is.
Yeah.
And particularly that rant video, I did a video in my car a few weeks ago when I just got back from the absolute fucking ordeal that was going to the store for a few supplies. And it just gave me an indication of where we're at and what things have got to in the year 2020. Whereas you used to just waltz into a store, pick up what you wanted, go to the checkout, pay for it, and walk out without a thought. Now it's like going into a concentration camp, really, because you've got all these draconian restrictions. You're being told where you've got to stand, what way round you've got to go in the store. You've got to stand behind bits of tape. You've got to make sure you stand a certain distance from the next person. You've got to queue up at the checkouts, maintain a certain distance, all these ridiculous restrictions. And it had really gotten to me that particular day. And so I just let the fury and the anger flow through me, and I just lost my cool on this video, and I put it out completely spontaneously as it was. And so many people have contacted me since that day. It's got to be thousands now, maybe even tens of thousands. I get emails every day. It takes me the vast majority of each day to answer my correspondence now. Yeah. And a lot of people have found the work that I'm doing now off the basis of that video and off the basis of them being shit scared by what the world has become. They don't understand it. It's not the world that they knew, and they're looking for answers. And one way or another, many of these people have come across my work and they're discovering me for the first time. So before this coronavirus situation, I had around 10,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel, which isn't that many. In the last few weeks, it shot up to nearly 16. I had something like 29,000 views for my most popular video, and now it's up to 44,000 for the ramp video I did in the car. So it's an indication that people are discovering my work. And I know from the personal emails I've had from so many people that I have woken up and put on the path to discovering truthful information. It's got to be thousands of people, if not tens of thousands. And the reason I know this is because they tell me so. I get emails every day saying, thank you for your work. You've made me view the world in a different way. I'm now looking at this situation, and I'm now engaging myself on this particular path. And I don't say that to blow my own trumpet. I don't say that from any place of ego. I'm just saying it because I'm an ordinary, regular guy. I've got no special qualifications. I'm just someone that woke up to truth a few years ago and decided to use the skill set that I'd built up to that point. So I knew how to do interviews. I knew how to do broadcasts. I knew how to put podcasts together. I knew how to write. So I wrote some books. I'm just bringing the skills that I've got to the table, but anyone can be doing this. And this is always my message to people. I don't want to hear from people saying that my work has inspired them and they now understand it so well and they've absorbed all this information and they're just leaving it at that. I want to hear from people saying that I've inspired them to get on the path themselves and make their own contribution and bring their own skill set to the table. So now they're going out and waking up other people and paying it forward. There are certain researchers that woke me up early in the day. And they inspired me to do what I'm doing now. And I want to have that same effect on other people to get them to go out and fly on their own. And people tell me that I've achieved this. And the point is, I'm just a regular guy. And if I can wake up that many people, then anyone could be doing this. And if every one person that I've got through to on an individual basis were to seek to engage just one more person in their circle of family and friends and get them on this path, then imagine how quickly and exponentially the spreading of truth could go, and it has to.
Absolutely, and you know, it's every time we speak. I mean, we haven't spoken that much, but you know, now I hear you more, and I understand more why we speak, because what you're saying now is me. You're saying me. It's what I've been saying to so many people. In Hebrew, in English, whatever. Listen, I'm just a normal guy. I've woken up. I understand what's going on. I cannot not act. You know, when people tell me, look, I know, I see what 5G is. I know what it is. What do you suggest I do? I'm like, I take something from Claire Edwards, and I'm saying, if you learn what 5G is and you're asking me what to do, you don't know what 5G is. Because when you understand what 5G is, you have to act. Because understanding what 5G is lead you to action, not to learn more about what 5G is, but to act, to inform others about what it is, to put out books, flyers, posters, a video, whatever. You have to shout it loud as possible. So I'm resonating with everything you said so much, because it's a reflection of me, of my way, of my perception, you know. So thank you for that, Mark. Really, my
That's why we
brother.
wanted to link up, isn't it? I had you on one of my shows and you've got me on yours now, because we were together on that event 202 and I really liked what you were saying. So there were something like 16 speakers and everyone had their chance to pipe up and say their piece. And when you came on, I felt that resonance with you as well. And isn't it incredible? You know, you're in Israel, I'm here in England, we've never met. And yet we've got on similar paths in life. Yes. And if it weren't the internet, if it weren't for the technology that we now have, we would never even know that each other existed. So I've gone on many a tirade and a rant about how technology is being used to suppress us and dominate us and control us. I'm not a fan of technology per se, because I look at artificial intelligence. I don't think that's going to be a great deal for humanity. I look at 5G and what that's capable of. I look at facial recognition systems and electronic surveillance, and I don't like any of that. But then again, you have to factor in that the internet and communications means such as the one we're on now have provided so many people around the world with an opportunity to share information and realize that we're not alone. This is another thing that people communicate to me so much in the emails that I now get. They're saying, thank you for your video. You articulated exactly how I feel about this situation. When I look around me, all I see is people walking around in masks, terrified, in a fearful state, jumping into the traffic to get away from me because they think I'm going to infect them the minute I go too close to them. All my friends and family are buying all the bullshit from the mainstream media and everything the government tells them. And to be honest with you, I've felt suicidal. People have told me this, you know, because I feel like nobody is seeing things the way I do. And they've said, thank God for the likes of you and other people that I've looked at who are letting me know that other people see the world in the same way that I do. And so the technology that we're on now enables us to realize that all around the world, there are individuals that see things in the same way that we do. Not many, but in every country, there's going to be some. And it really feels to me like in every generation that comes along in humanity, there's a small number who are there to undergo these experiences. They've made this decision on a spirit level, on a soul level before they've come here. They've conceded and agreed to come into the timeline at this particular point, experience what's going on, make their contribution to it and play their part in the process, and take away a whole load of knowledge and wisdom with them so that their soul can grow and evolve. And then when you pass away and you go back to source, you take all that wisdom with you that you've accumulated in that lifetime. And every generation, there's a certain number of people that achieve that, and everybody else is there. They've been described as backdrop players. So certain spiritual gurus describe them as backdrop people. So they're there to, they're bit part actors in a play or a movie, you know. So you've got the main players, and then you've got the bit part actors in the background. And these are people who, they're just not going to get it in this lifetime. And we all know these people. We've got them in our own families. We've got them in our circle of friends. We associate with them all the time. And it's clear they're just not going to wake up to truth. They're not going to embrace it in this lifetime. They're too heavily conditioned. They're too heavily mind controlled. They're too attached to their owners, their controllers. They've got Stockholm syndrome. Whatever the reason is, you feel like you could sit these people down for days and weeks on end and show them no end of documentaries, no end of films, no end of books, no end of documents, and they still just would not get it because they've invested this human lifetime of theirs in ignorance. They've chosen to live an entire life in ignorance. Maybe they'll get it next time around, but this time on the merry-go-round, it's pretty clear they're not going to get it. And only a certain few do every generation. And it's a very sobering thing to realize that you're one of that number, particularly when it took you so many years to get there. Because 15, 20 years ago, if you told me I'd be doing this with my life now, I'd have told you were crazy and you're smoking some heavy ass shit, you know. But here I am, and I'm connecting with people like you. And I never would have imagined that this would happen. But it's clear that we're doing what we came here to do right now.
I totally agree.
And also,
yeah,
just reflect on this. Imagine if you and I had never been born. Imagine how many people we've been able to affect and influence through our work. Now, if we'd never been born, all those people that we've inspired may never have got on the path that they're now on.
Yeah.
They might not have found another researcher's work.
Yeah.
They might not have found another way to get into all this stuff. It may be the fact that it was just you and me that did it, that engaged them in that way. And so you realize how much value your life has in terms of, if you'd never incarnated here, all those people may not, be in the state of consciousness that they are now. And again, it comes back to the fact that there's nothing special about guys like you and me. We're just doing what we came here to do, and anyone can achieve this.
I agree, and still something in me is like, you speak about some people who may never wake up, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure, because I know, let's say 15 years ago, I did not know what I know now about reality, and in a mysterious way it happened also to you, also to all of us who have woken up in a mysterious way, because before I understood what's going on, let's say, I got hints and I ignored them. I got messages and I ignored them. But one day it clicked, it happened. And I'm still giving the benefit of the doubt to those who hold their belief system, their fake belief system. I still hold the benefit of the doubt. I give them the benefit of the doubt to wake up. I do see and feel that God is much greater than what I think they are doing or supposed to do, wake up or still sleep, etc. So I reserve myself the right to object slightly to what you said and say, hang on, I don't know. I will still, and I know you too, you will still work on waking up as many people as possible to what is going on, to truth and to the lies, to see the lies and to see the truth. So that's the only thing I'm kind of reserving. I was a bit moving uncomfortably on the chair when you said it.
Well, I can clarify that a bit more if you like. I think there are people in the world today, and these people are there every generation, who are never going to wake up. They're too calcified, they're too mind controlled. We must all know these people. I get, again, communications about this every day from people saying, I've tried to get through to my mum, I've tried to get through to my husband. No matter what I say, they're just not having it. They just call me a conspiracy theorist and carry on watching the mainstream news. So there are some people that are never going to get it. But there are other people in a different kind of grouping, I feel, who have the potential to wake up. They have the potential to embrace truth and understand that everything is lies and deception in this world. And these are the people we need to concentrate on winning over. So the ones who it becomes clear are never going to get it, you have to leave them to their own karma. They've made that choice, and they must take the consequences for choosing ignorance. There are going to be other people who might be in a state of ignorance right now, but given the right start, given the right push, given the right motivation, with the right information presented to them at the right time, because you're right, things only happen when they're supposed to happen and not a minute before. Yeah. That's why we wake up at certain points in our lives and not before that moment. So given the right prompt, I feel this group of people may well be able to wake up and join our number and come over on the side of truth. So these are the people we need to concentrate on, the ones that show a little glimmer. You can engage them in conversation and they'll ask you a few questions, and you can detect there's a bit of curiosity here. Yes. So you have to engage that curiosity and steer it into a useful place.
I agree. Can you share with us, because some people which among my audience, I would guess they don't know your work. Can you tell them, introduce them to Hollywood or to the music industry, to the truth behind what's running Hollywood and the music industry?
Yeah, well, when it comes to the Hollywood film industry or the music industry, or television, or professional sports, or supermodels or celebrity chefs or politicians or prominent business leaders. In other words, anyone that people have heard of, that is an A-lister, is a household name, is a celebrity. It could be Bill Gates, Richard Branson, or Jeff Bezos, or Elon Musk from the world of big business. It could be Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, Johnny Depp, Robert De Niro, Nicole Kidman in the world of movies. It could be the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Elton John, David Bowie, Bono from U2 in the world of music. Any of these people that have achieved that level of success and prominence and influence has had their career gifted to them by the institutions that make these things happen. Nobody gets to that kind of status just through hard work and crossing their fingers for good luck. It just doesn't work that way. We have these myths, these legends perpetuated all the time. If you go on Wikipedia and you look up some of these big groups, these famous bands, they will tell you that they were just a bunch of lads from college or art school or whatever. They got together, formed a band, wrote a few songs, practiced a few guitar riffs, took a demo tape to a few record companies. Eventually somebody liked the sound of them. They got signed. They put out a few singles, a few albums. They became really big. They started playing stadiums. They became really famous. Everyone knew of them. You'll be told that story because they're not going to reveal the truth, which is these people are selected for these roles. And it happens in a couple of ways. First off, many of the people that populate these industries come from certain family bloodlines. And you'll find these going back many generations. The different generations of these bloodlines as time goes on are ushered into public roles where they can have an influence on society, on culture, on the mindset of the general public. And they're given all kinds of different roles. So you might find in one generation, expressions of a particular family become mayors, politicians, government ministers, religious leaders. The next generation, you might find one or two of them being inserted into the film industry as actors, or they might be inserted into the music industry as a prominent musician, or they might become a business leader. They might become any kind of famous person that people have heard of. There are many examples of this, which I've exposed in my Musical Truth books and in many of the talks that I've done, of different generations where you find the modern expression of it is somebody from that family as a musician, but you go back and work out what their father and their grandfather did, and you get invested in the world of politics and the world of organized religion and the world of secret societies. We get a lot of this. And also it connects into military intelligence in a big way as well. Yes. So many prominent musicians, actors, famous people generally have connections to the CIA, the FBI, or MI5, MI6 in the UK, or Mossad, or any of these different military intelligence organizations. And it also goes into organizations like Skull and Bones, the secret society fraternities, that one coming out of Yale University, and it goes into the Freemasons and the Jesuits and all these different secret society orders. So that's one way that people get put into these industries. Another way is they do start out with some genuine talent, and they do start out at a relatively organic grassroots level. And these industries have spotters whose job it is to discern potential talent. So they will go around music clubs and see which bands show a spark of promise, and they'll keep an eye out for actors that are really good in stage school, you know. And quite often they'll be looking for narcissistic traits in these people. They're looking for people that would literally do anything for fame and fortune. They'd sell their own mother, you know. Yeah. They're trained to look out for certain morals or lack of morals in a person's behaviors. And if they think they detect someone that is prepared to sell their soul for fame and fortune, they make them an offer. And in many cases, these people will accept, because they're offered wealth and fortune beyond their wildest dreams. All they've got to do is sign on the dotted line. And the minute they do that, their ass is owned by these corporations. And there's a very literal sense in which they sell their soul for fame and fortune. So it's a phrase that people hear and they think it's just metaphorical. It doesn't really mean anything. But there is a very real sense in which you do lose a part of your innate humanity and your spirituality when you join these corporations, because the institutions that run Hollywood and that run the corporate music industry at a major level, all these big labels, are satanic in nature. They're dark occultists, and they adhere to these religious practices and these ritualistic behaviors which are important to them. It sounds fantastic and unbelievable to people hearing it for the first time, but for those that run these industries, that's the sort of thing they're steeped in. And very quickly, when you sign yourself up to one of these institutions, you will be brought into this kind of behavior. We've heard about parties of the type that were depicted in Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut movie, which take place, and recruits into the music industry and Hollywood and all these different expressions of popular culture are required to attend these parties. We've heard about all kinds of depraved sexual activity that takes place at these places. And this ties into the Jeffrey Epstein narrative, which we heard so much about last year when that hit the mainstream. So Jeffrey Epstein was well known for having many celebrities and famous politicians and, you know, famous people generally flying out to his island on the so-called Lolita Express. And what that operation was all about was getting these famous people in compromising positions with children and filming them, and that being used as evidence against them should the opportunity or the need ever arise. And that is the number one way in which they get politicians, particularly, to stay on script and do their bidding and do whatever's asked of them, because they've got this evidence hanging over them, which they threaten to make public if ever these people decide to cross them or not obey one of their dictates. And the same thing happens with celebrities as well. So the reason why certain people become very famous Hollywood actors and seem to get all the top roles in films is because they're the ones that are the most compromised, and they're the ones that have been prepared to sell their soul and degrade their humanity to the greatest degree. And it will be the same in the music industry as well. So that's how you can know these people. And many of them are what are referred to as lifetime actors. And that means somebody that is inserted into a public role, into popular culture. So everyone knows their name. They know who they are. They're recognized as one thing or another, as an actor, as a musician, as a business leader, as a politician. And that's the way you think of them. But you discover some very interesting things when you look at their extracurricular activities. So you look at certain agendas that they're used to prop up. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they're a rock star or an actor. Whenever there's some kind of social engineering cause that needs to be reinforced, you find many of these people wheeled out to prop it up. It might be propagating the transgender agenda, the transhumanist agenda, the climate change hoax. You get many of these celebrities doing commercials and public service broadcasts to reinforce the narrative of one of these things. And we've had it recently with the whole COVID-19 coronavirus thing. You know, certain celebrities here in the UK certainly have been used to reinforce this mantra of stay at home, save lives. And the idea is that if you get a famous person that so many people love and look up to, and they consider them to be a public hero and a guru, if they're giving you that message, people are going to be far more likely to respond to it because they like this person, they respect this person, they're going to do what they say. So you can find out a lot about somebody's true nature by all the different agendas and all the different causes that they are seen to prop up outside of their main activity. I mean, Bono is a great example. Look at how Bono over the years has allied himself with the United Nations, with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He's been hobnobbing with presidents. He was evidently best mates with Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, best mates with the Pope. There's photographs of him with all these people hanging around with Bill Gates, you know. And what does that have to do with being a rock singer in an Irish band, you know? Bugger all. But the point is, Bono was never just a rock singer. He was so much more than that. He was chosen for that public role because of, you know, the other things that he could be used to reinforce. Same thing goes with Bob Geldof, his mate, you know, from the Boomtown Rats, who was behind Band Aid and Live Aid. Well, it was never about Bob Geldof being a singer in a new wave Irish band. It was about Bob Geldof being used later on when the time was deemed right to be the public face of all these different agendas. More recently, he's been promoting smart meters and saying it would be a good idea for everyone to get one of these. So whenever the need arises, these people are wheeled out to do this. We had Lady Gaga just the other week curating this One World at Home concert, which is where all these rock stars were performing from their living rooms, apparently. We're supposed to believe that Mick Jagger and Elton John and all these people hooked up all their own equipment and put all the cables and all the wires in and knew how to do that all themselves in their own home without an engineering team, a bloody crew coming in and doing it for them, you know. And the whole thing was just to reinforce the idea of, you've got to stay at home, folks. Don't go out. Look, all these rock stars are doing this from their living rooms. They're playing for you from the goodness of their hearts. And if they can do this for you, then the least you can do is stay at home. Don't go out. That's why it's called One World at Home. And Lady Gaga was curating that whole thing. Well, it's very interesting to look at who Lady Gaga's mother is, Cynthia Germanotta. It turns out she's a mental health ambassador to the World Health Organization. So she's someone that is recruited to represent the interests of people suffering from mental health. Now, there's an irony there, because when you look at what several weeks of lockdown has caused in terms of the untold damage and harm that it's had on families all over the world, there are going to be, first of all, so many suicides, so many people who've just not been able to cope with the isolation, with the lack of social contact with others. And we know from data that's available that people have been committing suicide as a direct result of having these lockdown conditions forced on them. But then you've got so many people that have been undergoing mental health issues. I've got an example of that in my own family. I can speak from experience as a direct result of this lockdown. And how ironic then that Lady Gaga's mother is the World Health, the mental health ambassador for the World Health Organization. And there's her daughter curating a concert which is reinforcing the message, stay at home, don't go out, don't have social contact with other people. So when you look at agendas that these people prop up, it becomes obvious what their real role in society was always meant to be. They get them famous as a rock star, they get them famous as an actor, so that people pay attention to them and listen to the other messages that they put out.
What about if you can, just comment on the Pizzagate story and who is involved and what do you think to it?
Well, Pizzagate is absolutely real from my research. I mean, even before the Pizzagate narrative came along in 2016, round about the time of the American election where Trump was going up against Hillary. And at that time, everyone considered it was a done deal that Hillary Clinton was going to get voted in as president. And it was a shock to so many people when Donald Trump got in. But it's interesting to me that the whole Pizzagate thing emerged round about that time. And it was a follow-on from information that I'd come across years before about how you have pedophile networks that torture and abuse children. It's absolutely horrific stuff. And in recent times, we've had more added to that whole story when it comes to the harvesting of adrenochrome from children, which is, taking Pizzagate onto a whole new level. And I always knew that so many of these business leaders, these world leaders, these politicians, these celebrities were involved in the abuse and the torture and murder of children. It's devastating information to come to terms with, but for as long as people ignore it, then it just continues. So we have to face up to these very ugly facts. And more of that is coming to the table now, particularly with this Q narrative. I don't know if we want to go there, but anyone that has studied that whole thing, whatever your opinion is of it, a big part of that involves the imminent exposure and bringing to justice of some very well-known names that have been involved in the harvesting of adrenochrome from children, which evidently is a habit of many rich and famous people to ingest this substance to give them youth and to revitalize them biologically. So it is absolutely horrific stuff, and it's fantastic stuff for people hearing it for the first time. And someone's first instinct might be to say, this is just so outrageous, I can't believe it's true. But there is evidence to show that this goes on. There have been insiders, there have been survivors of this type of activity that have come forward to explain what goes on. And we do owe it to ourselves as open-minded researchers and as compassionate human beings to pay attention to this and, give it the attention it deserves.
You know, a couple of days ago, I put out a video in English, a short one, and I felt it's so important that I had to do the same one in Hebrew. Sometimes I do that. And the message there was, because, this is just me, my opinion, because we humans are good in nature, we cannot accept, we cannot comprehend, we cannot perceive the extent of evil. And when someone who doesn't know anything about these subjects, you know, the adrenochrome and the Pizzagate and what's happening really behind the scenes, when someone comes across this for the first time, and if he's good and sane, he just cannot accept it as a reality. It doesn't penetrate the brain. There's like a mechanism that blocks, you know, it's like a self-preservation mechanism that blocks this information, and sometimes he or she needs to hear it maybe another time and another time and another time from other directions to accept it as possibly, at least, as a reality. And I put out this video in English, only 10 minutes or so, and then I did another one in Hebrew because I felt I owe it also to the Hebrew speaking crowd here to tell them about this. It's okay to reject this information. I've been there, done that. I bet you too. I mean, we all, those who have woken up to the atrocities are being done in this world. We didn't want to, it's not nice to accept it. It's not nice, you know, understated, obviously. It's okay to reject it. It means you are sane. It means you are good in heart. It means your morality is in the right place. So you have to be joyful for that, because you are from the good guys, you know, if you cannot accept this as real. But once you, and this is where I join what you just said, after you accept the possibility that it's real, you have to stop it. You have to act in order to stop it, even just to inform others about it. It's a
particularly when you've got kids of your own, right? I bet you feel that way. You look at your own kids and you just shake your head at what others are capable of doing to other people's children. That really gives you a kick up the arse, I find.
And in our recent talk, we spoke about that as well. That I said so and you said so. That for me, it's to the end, because I know what is at stakes here. Meaning, the corona, the 5G, what have you, everything that is happening at the moment is coming from the same bloodthirsty elite, which are actually behind the scenes part of this agenda that involves sacrificing children, etc., etc. You say it much better than me. And I cannot stand and watch it happen without intervene, without interfering with their plan. And I will do it till my last breath. I got nothing to lose.
Yeah, me too.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And it's so important, I think, for people, once they understand it. I've been saying, in the last few weeks, I've been saying to people, stop being afraid to die. Not because I want to die, not at all. But when you have your priorities set right, fear of death is a minor thing. Because we are all going to die at some point, but it's about how you live your life. It's about what's your priorities. And guys, girls, our priority has to be looking after our children, looking after our future, and stopping everyone who is trying to harm them, everyone who is trying to control them. And whether it's done by a fake story, whether it's done by an assault, a physical assault, a mental assault, doesn't matter. We are here to do God's work. And it's so important. And, it's an opportunity for me. Probably also I resonate other people's opinions as well. Mark, I want to say thank you to you for all the work you've done all these years, because I know what you've done. I know the material, I know what you've been through to understand all these things, to write about them, to look, to dig for examples. It stains your brain, it stains your heart, and only rare people can do it. And we know it's true. I know you know that
It's
what
been
I
described as swimming in sewage.
absolutely.
That's what this work is like sometimes.
Absolutely. And you have to be really pure, really good intent in your heart in order to swim in this sewage and to come out and still know that you are right, and without any dirt sticking on you. It's so hard to do, and only rare people can do it. So I want to really, from the bottom of my heart, man, I want to say thank you for everything you put out, the videos, the books, the information, the data you put out over the years. So important. You let so many people know about this evil force that it's working its way in the world, and you've done it in such a great way. So really, thank you so much, man. I want to just thank you.
I appreciate that, brother. And right back at you as well for your contributions. I mean, for me, there's just no other option. It's just not an option to not be doing this. I can't imagine turning my back on this work now. I just would never be able to do it. I could not decide tomorrow that fuck all this truth lark, it's too difficult. I'm getting too many haters. It's weighing on my soul too much. I'm not making anything from it. I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm going to go back to being a DJ and start doing parties and clubs again. That's never going to happen.
No.
It feels completely natural to me now. It feels like what I came here to do, my real work, and not doing it is just not an option for the rest of my days, for however much longer I've got left. And it is a real tactical advantage that the evildoers have, just going back to what you were saying there, in that they are able to undertake levels of evil that most people could not even conceive of. They could not even imagine that a human being is capable of doing these things. And because we ourselves would never do this, it gives them an advantage because they can sneak right under the radar and just do these very things without ever being suspected of it. And who knows how many kids over the years and decades and centuries have died needlessly because people just would not ever imagine this could be going on. And so it's enabled to continue. But I wanted to raise one thing, which is, again, going back to something you were talking about earlier, or it might have been in the other show that we did, which is the control system always give us an opportunity to know what they're doing. And it's been described as many different things. It expresses itself in the phenomenon known as predictive programming, which is where aspects of a real world event which is known to be coming, or it could even be a hoax, but the important thing is this is what people are going to be asked to believe. It's an event that's known to be coming. There's going to be a particular narrative that runs with it. People are going to be asked to believe a certain thing. And so to prepare them for it, they put aspects of this event into things like films, TV shows, music videos in the years and decades leading up to the event. And the only way this could occur is if all these different institutions like the film industry, the music industry, the television industry, the news, the media, the magazine industry, the book industry are ultimately all controlled by the same forces, the same groups, the same institutions that pull these events off and make them happen. So a good example would be 9/11. There's so much predictive programming pertaining to the events of 9/11 in movies and TV shows and stuff and music videos leading up to the events of 2001. The only way that can be explained, if you're not going to say it's all coincidence, is that the forces behind the events of September 11th, 2001 were intrinsically linked to the forces that control Hollywood and the music industry. And so there was inside knowledge in the upper levels of all these different institutions, and they're all working and communicating with each other. And we know this goes on through groups like Bilderberg and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and all these different secret society groups that meet up and plot these things like Event 201. pertaining to the recent coronavirus thing. But we're always given an opportunity to know in advance what's going to be done to us. So this is described as revelation of the method. It's sometimes described as placing the truth in plain sight. And in all cases, it's done in coded, symbolic kind of ways. So they're never blatant and obvious about it. They never come right out and say, on September 11th, 2001, we're going to hijack a couple of planes or whatever, the truth is of what happened that day, and fly them into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. They would never come right out and tell you that's what they're going to do. But they placed little sneaky coded aspects of it into movies and such in the years leading up to it. And in their sick, twisted way of thinking, because they're sick, twisted, psychopathic, deeply ill, mentally ill individuals, they feel that that represents them giving us fair warning of what's coming. And when we don't object to it in any way, how could you? Who are you supposed to write to say that you don't consent to these things? But nevertheless, as they see it, when we don't object to it or when we don't say no, they've got the green light to go right ahead and do this because we've not said that we don't consent to it. Yeah. And they take that tacit approval. So they do this all the time. And going back to Pizzagate that you just mentioned there, the name of the whole affair, Pizzagate, comes from FBI code, or what has been identified as by the FBI through investigations into these pedophile networks, coded language relating to the trafficking and the abuse of children. And it's all food-related terms that are used. So you have pizza, you have hot dog, you have
pasta, cheese sauce.
Yeah, pasta, cheese sauce, all of this, all food-related terms. And in many of the emails that were leaked through WikiLeaks back in 2016, the Podesta emails connecting back to Obama and Hillary Clinton, there were so many emails with coded food-related terms in them, including Barack Obama talking about flying in 13,000 pizzas from Chicago, especially for some party that he was going to host in Washington, which made no sense if he was really talking about pizza. But if that was code for flying in young children, it makes a whole lot of different sense. And so with Pizzagate, you had lots of music stars of the time, lots of pop artists that were putting pizza-related imagery into their music videos. It's deeply sick. This is Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Justin Bieber, Beyonce, Rihanna. All of these artists had references to pizza, or they had cartoon slices of pizza in pop videos, or they were hosting what they referred to as pizza parties. That was Katy Perry. She had this live stage show and she said, let's make this a pizza party. And she's inviting all these kids up on the stage, And to those in the know, it's blatant what they're communicating. They're letting you know that they're into pedophilia and, the sexual abuse of children. And they've got their foot soldiers, their stooges, their puppets, these pop artists, putting it right out there, all this pizza-related symbolism to let you know in this cryptic kind of way what they're up to. And of course, the vast majority of people have no idea what's going on. They don't realize what these references are to. But the likes of you and me and, the small number of vigilant researchers out there that have taken the time and trouble and done the due diligence to find out about this stuff know exactly what's being communicated. And so it's in part given us the opportunity to know and understand, and they feel they've gained our tacit approval. But there's also an element of satanic mockery going on there. They're rubbing our noses in it. They're saying, we know a small number of you and all this stuff, but there's nothing you can do about it. But that was then, and this is now. And we're in a different world in 2020, as we've discussed. Nothing is the same now for anyone. We've all been forced to undergo a new reality through the events of this year. And how it's going to pan out from here is really up to us as a collective, because we could have humanity's worst dystopian nightmare just around the corner. And everything that these sick evildoers have wanted to impose on us, like the 5G, the facial recognition, the smart cities, the surveillance, Agenda 2030 and everything that involves, that could be waiting for us just around the corner if we march headlong into it. But alternatively, this could be humanity's greatest moment and its best ever opportunity to take back its freedoms for itself, because so much is now being revealed to anyone that's paying attention. And as we discussed, it might have been earlier in this show or the other one that we did, the whole coronavirus situation, because it's affected everyone on Earth and nobody's outside of this, it has caused vast numbers of people to begrudgingly accept that the world is not like they thought it was, and their governments don't care about them. They're not there to keep them safe. The mainstream media is not there to tell them the truth. Its job is to lie to you and mind control you and feed you propaganda. So many people now realize this in a way that they didn't at the start of the year. And so we can turn that dynamic to our advantage. And we can use the situation that we now have with so many people having gained a new awareness of what's really going on in this world and the extent to which we are controlled by, as yet, up to now, unseen, invisible forces. We can turn this situation to our advantage. It's just waiting to happen. The potential is right there. And we've got to make sure it pans out the right way.
Yes, well put. I wanted to ask you, if it's all right, you don't have to. You don't have to go there. But I wanted to bring up Q, if you don't mind. Because it's related to the Pizzagate and everything else, and obviously the Clintons and the Obamas and those who are involved on one side in harming children, and on the other hand trying to prevent Trump from being elected. And it seems like Trump, I'm not sure about him, because he's saying one thing and doing another, he's doing one thing and saying another. But still, I'm curious to see where it's all going to, and I do hope that he's in favor of good and us. But the Q phenomena is quite interesting, and I'm just saying, giving my take on that, I still haven't seen one proof that it's true. I've seen a lot of pictures, words, symbols, YouTubes, etc., but not a proof. But I'm not holding my breath to see if he's right. I'm still acting. I know quite well few people who were really active, and then since they learn about Q, since the series of The Fall of the Cabal came out, they stopped being active, and they're waiting for Q to save them in a way. Or they feel they understand reality much better, so we don't need to do much because the good forces are working for us. And something in me is saying, well, I'm not sure about it. What's your take on that, if you don't mind me asking? And again, you don't have to.
No, I'm happy to answer that. I've never been one to go for the idea that there is a group that is going to save humanity and all we've got to do is sit back and watch the show. I've always considered that to be something to disempower people from their own personal activism. Over the years, there have been many claims that mass arrests of criminals and paedophiles are going to be coming. There's a guy called David Wilcock who many times has said, any minute now, folks, any minute now, you're going to see all these top-level banksters and the Queen and all these politicians get taken down and everything's going to get revealed. And it never happens. Yeah. So when the Q narrative came around, I considered it to be just another expression of that same dynamic, which is almost certainly a psyop, cooked up by social engineers to give well-meaning truthers the idea that you don't have to do anything because salvation is just around the corner. I did a show a couple of weeks ago with two guests, Charlie Freak and his wife Colleen, and they live in Mexico. I would consider them very good friends. I've done a number of shows with Charlie over the years. I consider him to be a very well-meaning, very kind and benevolent person, and also a very intelligent person, very smart in the good sense, And I've spoken to Charlie about many spiritual and metaphysical issues, and he started weighing in about this whole Q situation a few months ago. So I was curious to get him on a show to talk to him about this Q thing, because I've trusted him and I've found great value in his work and everything else he's put out. So I thought, well, I ought to hear him out and just see what he's got to say about this, because he studied the whole thing in great depth. So I did a 2.5-hour show with him. and I put it out a couple of weeks ago. And the response that I've got to it by way of emails is literally 50-50 down the middle. So I've got 50% of people saying, Mark, how can you be so naive? Don't you realize this is a scam, a psyop? Don't you realize you're being taken in? Don't you realize you should just leave this alone? And then 50% of people are saying, yes, there is validity to this. I can see it starting to happen. It's giving me hope. It's giving me optimism. And I think absolutely this is a real thing. So I was very skeptical of it to start with. I'm someone that, as a researcher, needs proof, needs evidence of something before I'm going to start putting any faith in it, you know. That's only sensible as a researcher. And I wasn't seeing any evidence early on. But through things that Charlie told me to look out for, and through just observing myself, I'm seeing some things start to happen. So first of all, Donald Trump a few weeks ago merged the Federal Reserve with the US Treasury. So for the first time in its 100-year plus history, he took the Fed out of the control of a private cartel of bankers who were outside of the jurisdiction of the American government into the US governmental system with himself as the nominal head of it. It wasn't covered a great deal in the mainstream media, so a lot of people may have missed it, but it's a very real thing. It's verifiable. Yeah. He did that. Also, he has been on the surface going along with this whole coronavirus narrative, and obviously America was put into lockdown the same as all these other countries, and Americans were told there's this pandemic and you got to wear face masks and you've got to social distance and all this. So you could look at that and think, well, if Trump is on the side of the people and if he's down with this Q narrative and he's working with this individual known as Q, who most researchers seem to think is John F. Kennedy Jr., JFK Jr., who supposedly died in a plane crash in July 1999. That's what we're told. But a lot of the people that are buying into the Q narrative believe that JFK Jr. in some way was able to fake his death, and that all along he has been planning to bring down the deep state, the cabal, the power system, because they were the institution responsible for killing his father and also his brother, Robert Kennedy, and, you know, all the tragedies that have befallen the Kennedy family. So the idea is that the Kennedys were good guys on the side of humanity. They wanted to challenge the system. They got made examples of to show what happens when you do stand up to the system. And JFK Jr. is wanting to enact some revenge on them. You know, people might roll their eyes at that suggestion. I don't know if JFK Jr. is alive or not. I can't possibly say, but that's how the narrative runs. So Trump is supposedly working in conjunction with this group, and he's got a lot of the US military that have come over to him, and they're disgusted and appalled by what many of these key players in politics and, you know, these other institutions have been doing to kids. They're absolutely disgusted by the adrenochrome industry and child trafficking and all this, and they vowed to bring it all down. So that's what we're told. So people might point to Trump going along with the coronavirus narrative, and they would say, well, if he's on the side of the people, why would he be towing the line and doing all this? And one answer to that is, if this Q thing is real, and if all this activity is going on underneath the smokescreen of these lockdowns as a result of the coronavirus, they need to move very slowly, they need to move cautiously, they need to move step by step, and they can't have this whole thing being revealed all at once until people are in a better state to be able to deal with these revelations, with this news. So that's one answer that we get as to why Trump seems to be playing along with it. One other thing that he did recently was he dumped the World Health Organization, Bill Gates' model of predicting where the supposed pandemic would go in terms of numbers of infected people. So he publicly rejected that, and he's using different models now to predict where things are going. So he's effectively severed ties with Bill Gates, which is a pretty positive thing to do, given how evil and psychopathic Bill Gates is and what he wants to achieve by way of his vaccination program, causing huge damage to large numbers of people. Other things that seem to be happening, Dr. Anthony Fauci appears to have been served with a sealed indictment just recently for the crimes that his misinformation and disinformation given to the American government has caused. There are said to be many other sealed indictments as well. We've got no way of verifying those at present.
Can you verify the Fauci indictment or no?
Well, alternative media has covered it, and they've stated that this is a real thing. But as to how much of a validation that is, I don't really know, because mainstream media has not covered it. It's not on the official record that this has happened. But we also get some very strange stuff going on with the Queen of England. She appears to have left the building, left her post, left the throne. There are, some clues to this. So the mainstream media in Britain, newspapers, so-called, have been telling the British public not to expect to see the Queen in public, possibly ever again. So initially the story was she's going to be out of circulation for several months, and it's because of the coronavirus. She's 94 and she's very vulnerable, so she's got to isolate and stay out of public circulation. But that has changed recently to you might not actually see the Queen in public again, folks, which is kind of consistent with her no longer being in power. Nobody's seen Prince Philip for months and months and months. I mean, he's 98 now, I think. So he may well already have died, and we've not been told about it. But we've got that to account for. Harry, Prince Harry and Meghan took off to California at the start of the year to go and distance themselves from the royal family. Prince William has taken off as well. Nobody really knows what's going on with Charles and Andrew. The royal seal, the royal crest, has disappeared from the official logo of the UK government. It's normally there in plain sight. It's been taken off. Also, people are suggesting that the official royal crest has disappeared from the gates of Buckingham Palace, which is now all locked up and the windows are boarded up. It was said that there was some refurbishment work that was going to take place in Buckingham Palace, which may be what's going on there. But when you look at all these things, and there's also claims that there's a new King of England, by the way. I don't know if you're up on that one. No. There is a guy by the name of Greg Hallett, Joseph Gregory Hallett, and for many years he's been stating that he is the true King of England, the true heir to the throne. He states that some generations ago the royal bloodline was usurped, and that when you look at the family tree, you look at where Queen Elizabeth came from and trace back her parentage, and you go back to the point at which the bloodline was hijacked and infiltrated, he says, by the Rothschilds, those nice people again. Then he claims that Queen Elizabeth is not the rightful heir to the throne, and that he is. And he shows this family tree that shows all the parentage and, the different aspects of the ancestry. So he's been claiming for some time that he's rightfully, lawfully King John III, as he refers to himself, of England. And he claims that a few weeks ago, the Queen ceded power over to him and recognised his place as the King of England. Obviously, this has not been covered by the mainstream. It's not been covered by a lot of the alternative media, and I don't know if it's true or not, because I've got nothing, no way of verifying it other than Greg Hallett's word for it at this stage. But there are some strange things happening. There was a senior Vatican priest, I forget the name of the guy, but he's said to have died just recently as well. So that may be just one of those natural things that occur, or there may be more to it. We had George H.W. Bush, George Bush Sr., who we're told died, a year or two ago. But researchers into the Q thing feel that he was taken out. They also feel that John McCain was assassinated for his treason as well. So as to whether there's anything to it, we can only speculate at this stage, but I'm willing to give it more time now than I was a few weeks ago. I am observing cautiously from the sidelines, but I'm not entirely averse to the suggestion that Donald Trump is doing good work on behalf of humanity, and that he is working to dismantle the deep state, as he refers to it, from the inside, and that he is looking to bring to justice some of these evildoers that have been involved in these monstrous crimes against humanity. So we will just have to continue watching and observing with interest, but that's my position on it. Yeah. It could be a thing.
I'm with you on that, to be honest. I'm on the same page here, really almost the same attitude towards it. What you
cautious
say again, sorry?
Cautious optimism, I would say.
Yes, optimism in general is good, and in these times, to be cautious is also good. Tell me what you take on the fact, or not the fact, but the stories that thousands of children have been rescued from underground, dungeons and bases and stuff like that. Where it finds
we've got no way. We've got no way of knowing. We've got no way of verifying this.
Yeah.
Some questions would be, who's now taking care of these children? Where are they being taken to? How do you even begin to reacclimatize someone that has spent their entire life living underground, as we're told many of these kids have, and undergoing this horrific trauma? We've got nothing to verify whether it's a real thing or not. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
I hope that some information will come to light on this to enable us to verify one way or the other if it's a valid thing. But at the moment, it's still only speculation. It's early days still. And these are fantastic, outrageous claims that are being made. And outrageous claims require some outrageous evidence to back them up.
Yes, absolutely.
Again, I'm not necessarily dismissing it.
Sure.
I'm just saying we need to see some kind of evidence, some kind of verification. According to many in the Q camp, we're going to get that. It is coming. Some months down the line, everyone is going to be given the opportunity to fully understand the horrific nature of what's been going on. I don't know how these mask-wearing, fearful normies that believe their governments are really nice people that are looking out for them are going to cope with that. That's given us one of the reasons for why this whole narrative is moving so slowly, because people just aren't in a mind state where they're capable of accepting that without going completely insane. I don't know how you would ever get over that.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, again, I'm with you on that as well. I do hope it to be true and that we can resolve everything as soon as possible. But obviously it's not in our hands. I mean, not you nor me. We have to.
I mean, a few months ago, if somebody had made the suggestion, there's this Q plan, I would have said it's all bollocks. I've heard it before. I've heard about these mass arrests. They never come.
Yeah.
It's all a psyop. 2020, everything's different. The rules have changed. The game has changed. It's a very different world. And you have very different ways of looking at things now to what was previously the case. That's why I'm prepared to give it at least the consideration now, because the world is nothing like it was, even by our standards.
I agree. What's your, I would say, like, to wrap it up in a nice way, not to speak about dungeons and save children's and stuff like that. What's your message to the people, to the world, to your mates, to your neighbors, to your family, to those you don't know, to humanity? And you know what? If you can combine in that a message to the cabal.
Okay, interesting one. Yes. First off, the message to humanity. The likes of you, Shai, me, and many, many other researchers have been warning for years or decades that there is a new world order plan tied in with Agenda 2030. There is a cabal, there is a control system, whatever name you want to put on it, and they do seek to control and dominate every aspect of humanity. And they are looking to take things to the end game. And that's where the artificial intelligence comes in, that's where the 5G comes in, that's where the smart cities come in, and we're very, very close to that now. There is no longer any kind of excuse for anyone to say that they didn't know about this. If you didn't know, why didn't you know? If you didn't know, it's because you've chosen not to know. The information is readily available. Many people tell you that these things go on. I made the point in one of my videos a couple of weeks ago that in 2020, everybody must surely know, at least this is the case in Britain, I don't know about other countries, but in the UK, everyone must know someone that talks about alternative conspiracy type issues. Yeah. At some point in your life, whether it's a family member, whether it's somebody you work with, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's, your cousin, somebody has tried to talk to you about this secret plan to enslave humanity. Everyone has had access to that. So if you've chosen to scoff at it and brush it off and say that's ridiculous, you've chosen to be ignorant in these matters. So there's no longer any excuse for not facing up to this. And we're so close now to the end game that these controllers have wanted to put in place for so long being instigated. So the question becomes, are we going to squander the greatest and possibly the last opportunity that humanity is ever going to have to put this tyranny down, stand up, unite in our mass numbers, stand shoulder to shoulder with each other and say collectively, we're not having this anymore? Because the minute enough people come together and unite on the same page and send that very clear message back to the controllers, we're not having this anymore. You're not our owners. You're not our slave masters. You're not going to dominate us. You're not going to control us. And the minute people stop complying with their own slavery. I mean, we could do a whole other show on the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the massive scam that that's been. But I think we can agree that it is a scam, that it is a massive pandemic. This was known to be coming. Whether or not there's a virus, we could argue about that all day long, but that's not the point. The point is this whole thing was designed as an exercise to introduce even more tyranny and even more draconian measures to all of us. What would have happened if enough people, when they were told to stay in their houses, social distance, close down their businesses, you can't earn a living anymore, you can't go and see your parents anymore, you've got to stay in till we tell you you can go out. What would have happened if enough people, or the vast majority, had said, bollocks to that, we're not doing it. You're not going to tell us when we can see our own parents. You're not going to tell us that we can no longer make a living. You're not going to tell us that we don't have our God-given natural-born rights to freedom of movement and freedom of assembly, to go out and go wherever we choose and to meet up with whoever we choose. For as long as just a small number of people are saying that, they're going to get oppressed and they're going to get picked off and made an example of. But the minute enough of a quantum amount of people stand up and say that, then the controllers have a problem, because their worst nightmare is enough people rising up and saying, we're not doing this anymore, we're not having it. You can stick your controls and your dictates and your statutes and your laws, because we're free sovereign people and we recognize our natural born status, and that's the way we're going to live from now on. So are we going to squander this chance that we now have to take that kind of freedom back to ourselves, or are the vast majority of us still going to cower away under mind control, under fear-based propaganda, and allow the whole of humanity to be enslaved? Because that would involve those of us that have taken personal responsibility for right action and that do side with truth, being held in collective punishment with all these other ignorant people that don't recognize those values. And we cannot allow that to happen. And those of us that have children, how are we going to justify to our own kids and our own grandkids us sitting by the sidelines and just allowing this tyrannical dystopian nightmare that's just around the corner to be put into place? And how are we going to answer them when they ask us what we were doing in 2020 when this thing was being built up all around us? Who is going to be capable of looking their own kids and their own grandkids in the eye and saying, I was doing nothing, or even worse, I was helping to bring it in because I was enforcing these measures in some way, or I was putting out propaganda and disinformation through the media, or I was a professional doctor, medical professional, and I knew that we weren't being told the truth about what a virus is, but my salary was more important than other people's freedoms, so I kept quiet about it. So that would be my message to humanity. You know, can you afford to envisage a day in the future where you have to have that conversation with your own kids and justify to them why you did nothing and why they're now living in a perpetual prison state? My message to the cabal, to the controllers, would be, you are losing, and you are going to lose, because you've underestimated a few things. you've underestimated the innate human spirit towards freedom and sovereignty and what these values represent. You've underestimated how a few who recognize these values and employ right action in their lives and side with truth and freedom and justice and love can turn this kind of situation around to our collective advantage. And we might not have everyone on board, but there are enough of us now to be able to dictate how this whole thing plays out. The control system has had its day for a very long time, but evil never prospers in the end. All the way through human history, you can look at multiple examples of when evil and tyranny has risen, and it always ends the same way. All these regimes have always eventually failed. None of them prosper and thrive and continue on, because evil always gets defeated. Truth always rises to the surface in the end. It takes a very long time sometimes for that process to occur. But for as long as people side with truth and good, godliness, with nature, with creation, with our innate humanity, then we can put down any kind of evil. And we're at a crossroads now. We're at a crucial moment of choice for humanity. And my message to the evildoers is, you've had your day, justice is coming, and the game is over for you. And that really is how I feel about it. I'm feeling quite positive today. You caught me on a good day.
Mark Devlin, thank you very much, man. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for the words you just said, which I think are really inspiring, and I agree with them. And thank you, as I said before, for everything you've done so far, for yourself, for your family, for my family, for my knowledge, and for all human race, really. Although most of them don't know your work, still I know they should thank you.
They can thank us later, Shai.
Exactly, exactly. Mate, all the best. God bless us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for getting me on. Great conversation.
Absolutely.
All the best to you.
Take care. Cheers, mate.
Okay.